"Cattleman, don't look, the water took my dress," whispered the Apache woman from behind the waterfall. The sun had started its slow descent behind the jagged cliffs of the canyon, casting long shadows that stretched across the dusty ground. The cattleman rode steadily along the narrow trail, his horse's hooves clattering softly on the uneven rocks. He had been traveling for days, moving his herd through the remote valleys where few people dared to venture. The land was beautiful in its wildness, but it could be dangerous too. Every now and then, a sudden gust of wind would kick up dust, or a loose rock would tumble down the slope. The cattleman was used to it. He had learned to respect the unpredictability of the wilderness. As he crested a small rise, he heard a distant sound that made him pause. At first, he thought it was the wind, whispering through the canyons. But then he realized it was something else, a faint, rushing sound, like water flowing over rocks. Curious, he guided his horse carefully down the slope, keeping his eyes on the narrow path ahead. The canyon walls were high here, worn smooth by years of wind and rain. The air smelled fresh, with a hint of pine and damp earth. There was something peaceful about this hidden corner of the wilderness, far from the dust and heat of the open plains. The sound of water grew louder as he moved closer, until he could see a silver shimmer glinting between the rocks. At first he thought it might be a small stream, but as he approached, he realized it was a waterfall, small yet strong, tumbling down a cliffside into a shallow pool below. The sight was breathtaking. Sunlight hit the falling water, making it sparkle like countless tiny diamonds. Mist rose from the pool, and the cool air near the waterfall carried the scent of wet stone and wildflowers. The cattleman slowed his horse, watching the waterfall with quiet admiration. Then he noticed movement behind the curtain of water. At first he thought it might be an animal, a deer perhaps, startled by the sound of water. But no, the movement was different, deliberate. Someone was standing behind the waterfall, partially hidden by the spray. "Who's there?" he called gently, trying not to startle whoever it was. The voice was calm, but there was a tension in the air. The figure behind the water did not immediately respond. Then, a soft, trembling voice broke through the sound of rushing water. "Cattleman, don't look, the water took my dress," whispered the voice. The cattleman froze. The words were unexpected, and the tone carried both fear and shame. He could barely make out the figure now, but he could see the outline of a young woman, her hands clutching what remained of her soaked clothing. She was trying to hide herself as best she could behind the waterfall, her body shivering slightly in the cool spray. He understood immediately that she was vulnerable. He also sensed the danger in breaking her trust. Without hesitation, he averted his eyes, looking down at his horse instead. "All right," he said softly, "I won't look. Are you hurt?" The woman's voice shook as she answered. "No, I think I'm okay, but I don't know how to get out from here." Her words were quiet, almost swallowed by the roar of the waterfall, yet the cattleman could hear every syllable clearly. He dismounted carefully, tying his horse to a nearby tree. Every movement was slow and deliberate. He did not want to alarm her. The rocks near the waterfall were slick with moisture, and the mist made it difficult to see clearly. He could hear her footsteps behind the water, cautious and hesitant. "I'll help you," he said, keeping his voice gentle. "You don't have to be afraid, I'm not going to hurt you." There was a pause, then a soft sniffle. I was traveling with my family. There was a flash flood and it swept me away. I don't know where they are. I was trying to find shelter and I ended up here." Her voice was small, almost broken, but it carried a strength born of survival. The cattleman nodded slowly. He had seen enough of the wilderness to understand how quickly it could change. Flash floods were deadly, and anyone caught in them without warning was at great risk. "You did the right thing finding shelter," he said. "You're safe now. I'll help you get out." The woman hesitated, then stepped a little closer, letting the water spray fall over her face and shoulders. He could see her eyes now, dark, alert, and full of both fear and determination. She was young, no more than a teenager, and yet there was a resilience in her posture, a quiet bravery that surprised him. He felt a mixture of respect and compassion for her. "Can you reach for my hand?" he asked, extending his arm carefully. "I'll help you out from behind the water." There was a long pause. Then slowly she extended her hand, letting it brush against his. Her fingers were cold from the water, but the touch carried a fragile trust. He guided her carefully around the edge of the pool, making sure every step was safe. She stumbled once, and he steadied her, feeling the tension in her shoulders ease slightly. Once she was out from behind the waterfall, he wrapped a blanket he had carried with him around her shoulders. The warmth of it contrasted with the chill of the spray, and she shivered less now. She glanced at him, her eyes searching his face for any sign of danger. "Thank you," she whispered. I didn't know if anyone would come." The cattleman shook his head. "You don't have to thank me. You did what anyone would do. You survived. That's the important thing." He offered her some water from his canteen, and she drank cautiously, taking small sips. He noticed the faint bruises on her arms and legs, evidence of her struggle through the canyon and the flood. He said nothing, understanding that words were not always necessary. As the sun continued to dip below the cliffs, the cattleman helped her sit on a nearby rock, out of the water's spray. They were quiet for a few moments, listening to the sound of the waterfall and the wind through the canyon. The world felt larger and wilder here, and yet in this small moment there was a sense of safety. Finally, she spoke again. "I don't even know your name," she said softly. "Call me James," he replied. "What's yours?" I'm Naeli," she said, the name soft and melodic in the canyon air. James nodded, committing the name to memory. There was something about her presence that made the canyon feel even more alive. Not just the water or the rocks, but the story she carried, the courage she had shown in surviving the flood. He realized that her voice, her words, and even her fear were part of the landscape now, weaving into the very fabric of the canyon. As night approached, he knew they could not stay by the waterfall. It would get cold, and there were dangers in the darkness. He began to plan carefully, thinking of the safest way to guide her to shelter. Naeli watched him silently, her trust growing slowly, like a fragile seed in the harsh wilderness. And though she was still wary, the first spark of hope had returned to her eyes. In that quiet canyon, beside the rushing waterfall, two strangers, brought together by chance and circumstance, had begun a story of survival, courage, and the delicate trust that could bridge two very different worlds. The next morning, the canyon was quiet except for the gentle rush of the waterfall and the occasional bird calling from the cliffs above. The sun had just begun to warm the rocks, painting the canyon walls with soft golden light. Naeli awoke first, her body sore from the cold night by the waterfall, but her spirit still strong. She could hear James moving nearby, preparing some food from the small provisions he carried. Despite the tension from the day before, there was a sense of calm in the morning air, a feeling that for a brief moment the world was safe. Naeli stretched her arms and looked around. The canyon had transformed overnight in the soft light, the shadows retreating from the rocks, revealing hidden nooks and the shimmer of the water. She felt both awe and fear. The land was beautiful, but it was wild and unforgiving. A wrong step could send her tumbling down a rocky slope, and she was still recovering from the flood that had thrown her into this dangerous world. She wondered where her family could be, whether they were safe, or if they were looking for her. The thought tightened her chest with worry. James approached with a small bundle of food and water, setting it carefully on a flat rock. "Eat," he said softly. "You need your strength if we're going to find your family." Naeli nodded, accepting the food cautiously. She wasn't used to strangers offering help. Her people had always taught her to be careful with outsiders, to trust slowly and wisely. But James had already proven himself. He had respected her privacy, he had not looked when she asked him not to, and he had offered safety without expecting anything in return. That mattered more to her than she could put into words. As they ate, Naeli began to speak, hesitantly at first. The flood, it came so fast. One moment my family and I were walking through the canyon, and the next, everything was water. Rocks, mud, trees, everything moving at once. I tried to hold on to my dress, but the current was too strong. It pulled me into the water, and I don't know how I made it to the waterfall. Her voice trembled and she stopped, swallowing hard. James nodded, listening carefully. "You're lucky to be alive," he said. "I've seen what flash floods can do. They take everything in a moment, leave nothing behind." Naeli looked at him, her eyes wide. "But my family, I can't find them. I don't know where they went. I can't stop thinking about them." James placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We'll find them," he said. "I know the land and I've traveled it for years. I'll help you. We'll search the canyon and we'll find them together." Her lips quivered and she nodded silently, a small spark of hope igniting within her. For the first time since the flood, she believed that survival didn't have to be lonely. She had an ally. After breakfast, they began their journey. The canyon paths were steep and rocky, often narrowing to a single trail along the cliff edge. James led the way, carefully testing each step before helping Naeli follow. She moved with caution, her bare feet or soft moccasins slipping on the wet rocks. Every now and then, she would reach out to steady herself, feeling the rough texture of the canyon walls beneath her fingertips. The air smelled fresh, carrying the scent of wet earth and wild plants. The sunlight danced across the rocks and the canyon seemed alive, almost breathing around them. As they walked, Naeli began to talk more about her life before the flood. She spoke of her family, her community, and the traditions that had shaped her. She described the songs sung around fires, the quiet walks along hidden streams, and the stories of her ancestors told under starlit skies. James listened silently, absorbing every word. He realized that this girl, so young yet so brave, carried with her a wealth of knowledge about the land, its hidden paths and its dangers. "You know this canyon well," James said finally, after she described a narrow trail that led to a hidden spring. Naeli smiled faintly. "I've been walking these paths since I was little. My father taught me where to find water, where to hide, and where the cliffs are safest. The canyon is like a friend if you know how to treat it." James nodded, impressed. "It's rare to meet someone who understands the land like that. You're strong, Naeli, stronger than most people I've met." She looked down at her feet, a hint of pride mixed with shyness. "I had to be. The world isn't always kind." They moved deeper into the canyon, the path becoming more challenging with each step. Loose stones shifted beneath their feet, and the sound of rushing water echoed from hidden crevices. Occasionally, they caught glimpses of wildlife, a deer drinking from a distant pool, birds soaring high above the cliffs, and the occasional rustle of small animals in the underbrush. The canyon was alive, beautiful and dangerous all at once. By midday, they reached a narrow ledge above the rushing river. Naeli paused, staring down at the water below. The flood had changed the landscape, leaving debris along the banks and displacing the familiar markers she had once known. She felt a pang of fear but pushed it aside. James watched her carefully, sensing her unease. "We'll need to be careful here," he said. "The current is strong and the rocks are slippery, but we can make it if we take it slow." She nodded, gripping his hand for reassurance. Step by step, they navigated the ledge, moving with caution and focus. Every slip or stumble was met with a steadying hand, a whispered word of encouragement. Slowly, they made it across, and Naeli felt a surge of confidence. She had survived the flood, and now she was surviving the canyon with James's help. As they continued, Naeli began to ask questions about James, his life, his travels, and why he was alone in this wild place. He told her about moving cattle through the remote valleys, the long days on horseback, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing the land so intimately. He spoke honestly, without embellishment, and Naeli listened with fascination. It was the first time in days she had felt normal, as if life had returned to its rhythm, if only for a moment. By late afternoon, they reached a small clearing where the sun shone warmly, and the canyon walls formed a protective embrace around them. They rested, drinking water from Naomi's secret spring, the same one she had spoken of earlier. James helped her clean minor scrapes and bruises, using water and cloth from his pack. Naomi felt a growing sense of gratitude. She had faced the flood, the waterfall, and the treacherous canyon, but she was not alone anymore. Sitting in the quiet clearing, Naomi finally allowed herself to speak freely about her fears and hopes. "I just want to find my family," she said. "I want to make sure they're safe, that they didn't. I can't imagine losing them." James nodded. "We'll find them. You've survived this long, Naomi. That means you're strong, and together we can face whatever comes next." The words comforted her. For the first time, she felt a real sense of hope. The canyon was still dangerous, the world still uncertain, but she had someone she could trust. And in the wilderness, trust was more valuable than anything else. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the canyon floor, they prepared to camp for the night. James found a sheltered spot against the rocks, safe from any sudden gusts of wind or falling debris. They gathered small branches for a fire, and the warmth of the flames drove away the evening chill. The crackling firelight reflected in Naomi's eyes, showing determination and quiet relief. Before sleeping, she whispered softly, almost to herself, "Thank you for helping me." James smiled faintly. "You don't need to thank me. You've shown courage, Naomi. That's what matters. We'll keep moving tomorrow." The night fell over the canyon, wrapping them in a blanket of stars. The sound of the waterfall in the distance, the crackle of the fire, and the whisper of the wind through the cliffs created a quiet symphony. Naomi lay beside James, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and peace. She had survived the flood, she had trusted a stranger, and for the first time in days she felt a small flicker of hope. In the heart of the wild canyon, two strangers had begun a journey together, a journey of survival, trust, and the search for family. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges and dangers, but Naomi knew one thing clearly: she was not alone. And that made all the difference. The morning air was crisp as Naomi and James packed up their small campsite. The fire had long since died, leaving only a faint trace of smoke curling into the sky. Dawn broke over the canyon, spilling golden light across the jagged cliffs and highlighting the wildflowers that clung stubbornly to the rocks. The canyon, which had seemed quiet and safe yesterday, now felt alive with possibility and danger. James led the way down a narrow, winding trail. The path was barely wide enough for one person, twisting sharply around cliffs and rocks. Naomi followed closely, her bare feet gripping the stones carefully, her eyes scanning every shadow. Every step required focus. A misstep here could mean injury or worse. Yet she felt stronger than the day before. Each obstacle she had overcome had given her confidence, and James's steady presence helped even more. "Look carefully," James said, pointing toward a section of the path where loose rocks threatened to slide beneath their feet. "We'll go slowly. Trust your instincts, but don't be afraid to lean on me if you need help." Naomi nodded silently. She had learned the hard way that the wilderness demanded respect, not fear. She moved cautiously, letting her hands brush against the rough canyon walls for balance. At moments, James would stop and wait for her, checking to make sure she was safe before continuing. His patience and care reassured her. For the first time in days, she felt that she had someone who truly understood the challenges of the canyon. As they descended deeper into the canyon, the sound of the waterfall from yesterday faded, replaced by the distant murmur of the river far below. The canyon walls rose steep and unforgiving on either side, and the light of the sun struggled to reach the trail at certain points. Shadows shifted mysteriously, making every rock and tree seem alive. Naomi felt a twinge of unease. Even though she had survived the flood and the waterfall, the canyon was unpredictable, and the memory of losing her family haunted her. James noticed her hesitation. "It's okay to be careful," he said softly. "The canyon is beautiful, but it's not forgiving. Every step matters." Naomi nodded, drawing strength from his words. She recalled her father's teachings: how to move carefully, how to find water, and how to read the signs of nature. Each lesson, once taken for granted, now felt like a lifeline. She stepped carefully, her eyes following the trail as her mind processed the vast, wild landscape around her. Midway down the canyon, they came across the remains of the flood. Trees had been uprooted, rocks scattered across the trail, and the once familiar landmarks Naomi had known were gone. She paused, feeling a sudden wave of fear and frustration. "Everything is different," she said quietly. "I don't even know if I'm going the right way." James put a hand on her shoulder. "It's okay. We'll navigate together. I've traveled these canyons before, and I've learned to read the land. Look for patterns in the rocks, follow the streams. They often lead to where people might have gone." Naomi took a deep breath and tried to steady herself. The canyon had been cruel and unpredictable, yet it had also tested her strength. With James's guidance, she began to trust her instincts again. Each step she took, though cautious, felt like a victory over the fear that had held her captive since the flood. As the day wore on, the terrain became more treacherous. They had to cross a narrow ledge above a deep drop, where a single misstep could be fatal. Naomi's heart pounded, but she focused on the trail and James's calm instructions. "Keep your center of gravity low, take your time, and place your feet firmly," he said. She did as he instructed, inching along the ledge, her hands brushing the canyon wall for support. One misstep, a sudden slip, and she could have fallen. Yet she did not panic. She concentrated, remembering everything her father had taught her about balance and focus. When they reached the end of the ledge safely, she exhaled a long breath, feeling a mixture of relief and pride. James smiled at her. "See, you're stronger than you think. That's the kind of courage that carries you through the canyon and life." They continued, navigating hidden streams and fallen logs, crossing small patches of loose soil that threatened to give way. Every challenge tested Naomi's patience and determination. Yet, with each obstacle overcome, she began to understand the true meaning of resilience. It wasn't just about surviving danger. It was about trusting herself, learning to adapt, and having the courage to keep moving forward despite fear. By mid-afternoon, they stumbled upon signs of other travelers. Footprints in the soft soil, broken branches, and faint markings on rocks hinted that Naomi's family might have passed this way. Her heart raced. "They were here," she whispered, barely audible. "They must be close." James nodded. "We'll follow these signs carefully. Step by step, we'll find them." The trail led them to a wide plateau where the canyon opened slightly. Wildflowers grew in patches of sunlight, and the air smelled sweet with the scent of pine and damp earth. Naomi's eyes scanned the area, searching for any sign of her family. For a brief moment, the beauty of the landscape distracted her from the fear and uncertainty. The canyon was harsh, but it also held moments of wonder. She realized that survival wasn't just about avoiding danger. It was also about noticing the beauty around her, even in the most difficult circumstances. As they moved across the plateau, Naomi noticed a small grove of trees near a stream. The trees had been partially uprooted by the flood, but the stream flowed steadily, clear and cool. She knelt beside it, cupping her hands to drink. The water refreshed her, washing away some of the exhaustion and fear she had carried since the flood. James watched her, a thoughtful look on his face. "Water is life," he said quietly. "It gives you strength, clears your mind, and reminds you that there's always a way forward." Naomi nodded, feeling the truth of his words. For the first time in days, she felt a sense of clarity. The canyon, though wild and dangerous, could be navigated. Her family could be found, and she had an ally who would not let her face the wilderness alone. As the sun began to lower in the sky, they spotted movement in the distance, figures walking carefully along the canyon edge. Naomi's heart leapt. That could be them, she whispered, her voice trembling with hope. James gestured for her to stay calm. Let's move carefully. We don't want to startle them. Take it slow and stay behind me. They approached cautiously, following the trail that led to the figures. As they drew closer, Naomi's heart raced faster with each step. She could see familiar shapes, hear the faint calls of her family in the distance. Relief and joy mingled with lingering fear, the fear that they might have been harmed, or that she might lose them again. Finally, they reached a small clearing where Naomi's family stood, searching desperately for her. Her mother's eyes widened as she saw Naomi, and she ran forward, embracing her daughter tightly. Naomi felt tears streaming down her face, a mixture of relief, joy, and lingering fear washing over her. Her father joined the embrace, holding her close as her younger siblings crowded around, eager to touch and reassure themselves that she was truly safe. James stood back, watching quietly. He felt a deep sense of satisfaction and relief. His role in this reunion was small, but it had been important. He had helped Naomi survive, guided her through the dangers of the canyon, and now he had helped bring her back to her family. He realized that sometimes survival wasn't just about endurance or skill. It was about compassion, trust, and the willingness to step into someone else's struggle and help them navigate it. Naomi's family welcomed James warmly, offering food and water, expressing gratitude for his help. Naomi smiled shyly, feeling a mix of pride and relief. She had survived, she had been brave, and she had learned the power of trust and human kindness. As the evening fell over the canyon, the family gathered together, sharing stories of the days they had spent searching for Naomi. The sun set behind the cliffs, casting long shadows across the canyon floor. Naomi sat quietly beside her family, reflecting on the journey she had just endured. She had faced fear, isolation, and the power of nature itself, but she had also discovered courage, trust, and the strength that comes from connection. James finally prepared to leave, knowing that his work here was done. Naomi and her family insisted he stay for the night, but he shook his head. "You're safe now," he said. "That's what matters. Keep looking out for each other and you'll be okay." Naomi hugged him tightly, her gratitude overwhelming. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know what I would have done without you." James smiled faintly, mounting his horse. "You're stronger than you think, Naomi. Remember that. And remember that even in the wildest places, help can come when you least expect it." As he rode away, Naomi watched him disappear into the canyon, a figure blending into the rugged landscape. She felt a deep sense of respect and admiration for the man who had guided her through the wilderness. But most of all, she felt hope. Hope for the future, hope for her family, and hope for herself. In the heart of the canyon, amid rocks, water, and wild beauty, Naomi had survived not just a flood, but a journey of courage, trust, and human connection. She had learned that fear could be faced, that strength could be found, and that even in the most challenging moments, hope could guide the way. The reunion with her family had brought Naomi a sense of relief she had not felt in days, but the memory of the flood and the journey through the canyon remained fresh in her mind. Even as she laughed and hugged her parents and siblings, a quiet tension lingered in her chest. She knew the canyon was still dangerous. The landscape had been altered by the flood, paths were blocked, and water levels could rise unexpectedly. The lesson she had learned so far was that survival was never guaranteed, even when hope seemed restored. That evening, as the family sat around a small fire in a sheltered clearing, Naomi's father spoke quietly, his voice tinged with both pride and worry. "You were brave, Naomi. You faced the flood and the wilderness on your own, and yet you survived. But remember, the canyon does not forgive carelessness. Even now, we must be cautious." Naomi nodded, listening intently. She knew her father was right. Courage alone had carried her through some of the worst moments, but knowledge and caution were equally important. She glanced at James, who was still standing a short distance away, watching over them. His presence had been a steady anchor through the chaos, and she felt a surge of gratitude. The next day, the family decided to move to higher ground, where the land was safer and the water from the flood less threatening. The trail was steep, and they had to navigate around fallen trees and displaced rocks. Naomi walked beside her father, who pointed out safer paths and places to rest. She noticed how much she had learned from her own ordeal. She could identify which rocks were stable, which paths would hold her weight, and how to move quietly through the canyon without attracting unwanted attention. Her body moved with a confidence born of experience, a stark contrast to the fear she had felt just days before. As they climbed, James stayed close, offering guidance and helping with the younger children. Naomi watched him, feeling a mixture of respect and admiration. He had been calm and patient through every dangerous step, never rushing, always thinking ahead. She realized that survival was not just about physical strength or knowledge of the land. It was also about patience, observation, and the quiet courage to keep moving forward. By midday, they reached a small plateau with a stream flowing gently through it. The family paused to rest and drink. Naomi sat on a rock beside the water, dipping her hands in and feeling the cool liquid flow over her skin. She thought about the waterfall where she had first met James, the cold spray on her body, and the fear that had consumed her. The memory was vivid, but it no longer paralyzed her. She had survived, and she had learned from the experience. As they continued their journey, the canyon began to reveal new challenges. The flood had washed away familiar landmarks, leaving the terrain confusing and difficult to navigate. Loose rocks threatened to tumble down steep slopes, and narrow ledges required careful balance. At one point, Naomi's younger brother stumbled on a slick patch of soil. She caught him just in time, steadying him with both hands. Her heart pounded, but she realized she no longer acted out of fear alone. She had learned to trust her instincts, to anticipate danger and to act quickly when necessary. James noticed her confidence growing. "You've changed," he said quietly as they paused on a ledge overlooking the canyon below. "You're stronger, more aware. The canyon has taught you well." Naomi smiled faintly, feeling the truth of his words. "I had no choice," she replied. "But I've learned that fear can't control me. I have to keep moving, keep thinking, or I won't survive." The day grew hotter, and the sun beat down on the canyon floor. The family searched for shade, finding a small cluster of trees near a rock formation that offered some relief. They rested, eating the small provisions they had carried, and drank from the stream that ran nearby. As they sat together, Naomi noticed the way the landscape had changed since the flood. Rocks were jagged and displaced, tree trunks lay twisted along the ground, and the soil was loose and unstable. The canyon was a living, changing force, and she understood that every step they took required awareness and care. Suddenly, a loud rumble echoed through the canyon. Naomi's heart leapt. She recognized the sound immediately. It was the distant roar of water, the unmistakable sign of another flash flood. Panic threatened to take hold, but she forced herself to remain calm. She had learned that fear could be dangerous, clouding judgment and slowing reaction time. She grabbed her brother's hand, pulled him close, and shouted for the family to move to higher ground. James acted quickly, scanning the canyon for a safe path. He pointed to a steep but stable slope leading up to a rocky outcrop. "This way," he shouted. "Move quickly but carefully." The family scrambled, following James's lead. Naomi took the lead with her younger siblings, guiding them over the uneven terrain. The roar of the water grew louder, and dust and debris fell from the cliffs above. The canyon seemed alive, threatening, and relentless, but Naomi did not panic. She remembered every lesson from the past days: how to move carefully, how to anticipate danger, and how to protect those weaker than herself. They reached the outcrop just as the floodwaters rushed past below, tearing through the canyon with a force that could have destroyed anything in its path. Naomi's family huddled together, breathing heavily, hearts pounding with relief and fear. The water surged through the canyon, carrying rocks, branches, and mud. Naomi watched, fascinated and horrified, as the flood reshaped the land before her eyes. She realized how fragile life could be, and yet how resilient humans were when faced with nature's fury. After the waters receded, the family descended cautiously, surveying the damage. The canyon had changed again, creating new obstacles and challenges. Naomi's father looked at her with a mixture of pride and concern. "You kept us safe," he said. "Your courage and quick thinking saved us today." Naomi felt a quiet satisfaction, a sense of accomplishment that went beyond relief. She had survived floods, waterfalls, and treacherous canyon paths. She had protected her family, learned from James, and discovered strength she had not known existed within her. She realized that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. As evening fell, they found a sheltered area beneath a rocky overhang where they could rest. James helped set up a small fire, and the family ate together, sharing stories of their experiences during the flood and their journey through the canyon. Naomi listened and contributed, speaking of the moments when she had felt fear and how she had overcome it. She spoke of James's guidance, the lessons of the canyon, and the importance of trust and patience. Her mother placed a hand on her shoulder. "You have grown so much, Naomi," she said softly. "You have faced the wild and you have learned to survive. You are no longer just my daughter, you are a strong, brave young woman." Naomi felt a warmth spread through her chest. The journey had been difficult, filled with fear and uncertainty, but it had also revealed her true strength. She looked at James, who gave a small nod of encouragement. His presence had been a quiet force throughout the ordeal, and she realized that some of the most important lessons came not from nature alone, but from the people who guided and supported her along the way. That night, as the canyon darkened and the stars appeared one by one in the clear sky, Naomi reflected on the events of the past days. She had survived a flood, navigated treacherous terrain, reunited with her family, and learned the meaning of courage, trust, and resilience. She understood that life was fragile, that nature was unpredictable, and that the bonds between people could provide strength beyond measure. The canyon, which had seemed like a place of fear and danger, now felt like a place of learning and growth. Naomi knew that the journey was not over. There would be more challenges ahead, but she also knew that she was ready. She had faced the wildest forces of nature and had emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined. As she drifted off to sleep beneath the rocky overhang, the sounds of the canyon surrounding her, Naomi felt a sense of peace. The journey had tested her in every way possible, but it had also revealed the depths of her courage and the power of human connection. She knew that the lessons she had learned in the canyon would stay with her forever, guiding her through every challenge that lay ahead. The next morning, the canyon was bathed in soft golden light, the air crisp and fragrant with the scent of damp earth and wildflowers. Naomi awoke early, her body tired but her spirit strong. The past days had been exhausting, filled with danger, fear, and uncertainty, but she had survived. She had faced the wildest forces of nature and had emerged wiser, braver, and more confident. She looked around at her family, who were already beginning to prepare for the day. Her parents and younger siblings were moving carefully, packing up their modest belongings, tending to minor scrapes and cuts, and making sure everyone was ready for the next part of the journey. James had stayed nearby overnight, offering guidance and support. Naomi watched him as he examined the trail ahead, checking for loose rocks and dangerous slopes. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for his presence, realizing that his calm and steady demeanor had been a crucial factor in their survival. He had guided them through the canyon, helped protect the family, and taught her lessons that went beyond survival. They were lessons about trust, courage, and the importance of helping others. "Are you ready to move?" James asked quietly, glancing at Nayeli. She nodded, a small smile on her face. "Yes, I'm ready." Together, they began the ascent toward higher ground. The canyon was still treacherous, but Nayeli's confidence had grown with each step. She moved carefully but with purpose, guiding her younger siblings when necessary and following James's lead. Every step reminded her of the lessons she had learned: to observe the land, to anticipate danger, and to act with calm determination. As they climbed, Nayeli thought about the events that had brought her to this point: the flood that had separated her from her family, the waterfall that had become her refuge, and the treacherous canyon paths she had navigated. Each memory carried fear, but also a sense of triumph. She had survived because she had trusted herself and the people who had helped her. She realized that courage was not just about facing danger. It was about making choices, taking responsibility, and remaining steadfast even when hope seemed distant. Midway through the climb, they reached a plateau with a small stream flowing through it. Nayeli knelt beside the water, cupping her hands to drink. The cool liquid refreshed her, washing away the exhaustion of the morning climb. She watched the sunlight dance on the ripples, reflecting tiny patterns on the rocks around them. It was a moment of calm, a brief pause in the constant movement and struggle of survival. James sat beside her, watching the water as well. "The canyon teaches in many ways," he said softly. "It shows you danger, but it also shows you beauty. You've learned both lessons, and that is what makes you strong." Nayeli nodded, understanding the truth of his words. Strength was not just physical, it was also mental, emotional, and spiritual. The canyon had tested every part of her being, and she had risen to meet each challenge. She looked at James with gratitude, realizing that his guidance had been as valuable as her own instincts. The family continued their journey, moving carefully through rocky paths and hidden trails. At times, the terrain became nearly impossible, with narrow ledges above steep drops and loose rocks threatening to give way underfoot. Nayeli's confidence never wavered. She remembered every lesson, every warning, every piece of advice from her father and from James. She guided her siblings, encouraged her parents, and navigated the canyon with skill and care. By midday, they reached a wider section of the canyon where the land opened slightly, and sunlight illuminated the valley below. Nayeli paused, taking in the sight. The flood had changed the landscape dramatically. Trees were uprooted, rocks were scattered, and the familiar paths she had known as a child were gone. Yet, in this changed world, she saw possibilities. She realized that life, like the canyon, could change unexpectedly, and that resilience and courage were the tools needed to navigate it. They continued down the trail, following the river that had carved its way through the canyon for centuries. The water was clear and cool, a reminder that even in a harsh environment, life could endure. Nayeli watched her family move carefully along the path, noting their exhaustion and relief. They had survived the flood, they had been reunited, and they were moving toward safety. Yet she understood that the journey was not just about physical survival. It was about learning, growth, and the bonds between people. As they traveled, Nayeli thought about the lessons she had learned from James. She remembered how he had guided her through dangerous terrain, how he had helped her trust herself, and how he had taught her to remain calm under pressure. She realized that the greatest lessons often came from those who cared enough to guide without demanding anything in return. James had been such a guide, and she felt a deep respect and gratitude for him. By late afternoon, they reached a large, sheltered area where they could rest. The canyon walls rose high around them, forming a protective barrier from wind and any sudden changes in weather. They set up a small fire, and the family ate the simple meal they had carried. The warmth of the flames and the soft light of the setting sun created a sense of peace and safety. Naeli's mother placed a hand on her shoulder. "You have grown so much," she said softly. "The canyon tested you and you passed every challenge. You have become strong and wise." Naeli smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. She realized that survival was more than endurance. It was about learning, growing, and finding hope even in the darkest moments. She thought about the flood, the waterfall, the treacherous ledges, and every obstacle she had overcome. Each moment had shaped her, revealing strength she had not known existed. As night fell, the family gathered together, sharing stories of the journey, the flood, and the moments of fear and triumph. They laughed quietly, sometimes pausing to reflect on the dangers they had faced. Naeli spoke about her experiences behind the waterfall, the fear of being alone, and the trust she had placed in James. Her siblings listened with wide eyes, absorbing every word. Her parents nodded, proud of her courage and resilience. James sat quietly nearby, watching the family interact. He had been a part of their journey, but he knew his role was complete. Naeli had learned the lessons she needed, and her family was safe. Yet, as he observed them, he felt a quiet satisfaction. He understood that the impact of guidance and support could be profound, shaping not just survival but character and courage. Before resting for the night, Naeli walked to the edge of the plateau, looking out over the canyon below. The land stretched endlessly, rugged and beautiful, a reminder of the power of nature and the resilience of those who lived within it. She thought about the journey she had undertaken, the flood that had separated her from her family, the waterfall where she had first met James, the dangerous paths she had navigated, and the lessons she had learned along the way. She felt gratitude, courage, and hope all intertwined in her heart. James approached quietly. "You've come far," he said softly, "not just in distance but in strength. You've learned courage, trust, and resilience. Those lessons will guide you for the rest of your life." Naeli smiled, feeling a deep sense of understanding. "I've learned that fear can't control me, that strength comes from facing challenges, and that trust is one of the most powerful tools we have." James nodded. "Exactly. And remember, even in the wildest places, help and guidance can appear when you least expect it. Never forget that." The family settled for the night, safe within the canyon's protective walls. Naeli lay beside her parents and siblings, feeling the warmth of their presence and the security of being together. She thought about the days that had passed, the flood, the waterfall, the treacherous canyon, and the moments of fear and courage. Each experience had shaped her, revealing a depth of strength, wisdom, and resilience she had not known existed. As she drifted off to sleep, she felt a sense of peace. The canyon, which had seemed dangerous and unpredictable, had become a teacher. It had tested her, guided her, and shown her the power of courage, trust, and human connection. She knew that the lessons she had learned would stay with her forever, shaping the person she would become and guiding her through every challenge ahead. In the heart of the canyon, amid rocks, water, and wild beauty, Naeli had survived and grown. She had faced fear, navigated danger, and discovered the strength within herself. She had learned that life was unpredictable, that courage was not the absence of fear, and that trust and compassion could make even the harshest journey possible. And as she slept under the stars, the canyon held her story, a story of survival, growth, and the enduring power of hope.